is the Rangers Journal now.
You're on mute, Kai.
Good start. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Rangers Journal. My name is Kai Watson and I'll be your host for this evening's preview pod of the Cup final tomorrow. We're in association with Manor Inverclyde and Off to the Match I Go. You can find the links for Off to the Match I Go in the description, but when I introduce Dino, I'll let Dino kind of talk a wee bit through Off to the Match I Go, what they provide. But we'll just go through the panel we have just now. So we have for his debut, Doug on tonight. So welcome, mate.
Thanks for having us.
And Cammy, welcome.
Hi, cheers. Looking forward to this one. Plenty to talk about.
And then Dino, just say hello, mate, and then talk a wee bit about Off to the Match I Go for us, please.
Yeah, so this is kind of looking forward to it tonight. Off the Match I Go is independently run business for basically 90% of Rangers fans, I would say. For any memorabilia you can actually think of. Just recently sold a piece for Richard Gough and for the 9 in a row and things like that. So it's anything you can think of, really. And he doesn't just accommodate for Rangers fans. He's recently done a Lawrence Shanklin piece, various UFC pieces, boxing pieces that he's done. So and he's probably got about 10,000 programmes from matches dating back as far as you could possibly think of. So yeah, and he's given me the joy of sitting in his shop doing the pod tonight, surrounded by Rangers history. So yeah, really good place to do it tonight, lads.
I'm very, very jealous of both you and Cammy's backdrops. I'm sitting here with playing wallpaper behind me and just the plethora of stuff you two have got behind me is making me very jealous. But we're obviously here to talk about the Cup final. So just want to start by just getting a feeler for how everyone's feeling going into the game tomorrow. So Doug, I'll just come to yourself first. How are you feeling heading into the game tomorrow?
I think like a lot of fans, I kind of feel a little underwhelmed to the way you normally would going into a cup final. I want to believe, that we can do great things, that we can win the game, but there's just that thing in the back of my mind, with how the seasons went, and in particular the games against Celtic, there's that worry. So I'm just hoping that the occasion, the cup final feel can bring something out and we can sort of flip the script on how things have gone this year so far.
What
about yourself, Cammy? How are you feeling going into the game tomorrow?
Fairly similar to what Doug's just basically said there. It's I just don't want to see more of the same tomorrow. Learn from things that haven't went our way in the, not even just under Philip Clement, for the last couple of years, Old Firm games, the way that we've approached them. And I think we all know, well, I think we're all in agreement that we need to deviate from what is it they say about insanity, is just doing the same thing again and again and again. And that's the worry for me tomorrow, regardless of personnel. I know there's been a lot of criticism of certain players, and rightly so. But I think the system and the structure, tactical setup, press, whatever you want to call it, that's the biggest concern for me tomorrow. And I just hope this is probably the final game for a lot of Rangers players that's going to be in that squad tomorrow. Maybe not as many as we would all like, but that's another conversation entirely. But I think if I was John Lundstrom or Borna Barisic or the likes of Sima, could be his last game, I'd be wanting to go out on a high with a match-winning performance and a winner's medal, and throwing that cup into the Rangers fans at the end of the game. So I'm a bit apprehensive, but always hopeful.
I think as fans, it's one of those things we don't feel like we're asking for much to ask the team at any point to go on the park and give it their all. like, I think it's something we can expect, but especially when it comes to the games against Celtic, you just feel like, especially this team and some of the players, owes that big, massive performance that they've not given. Obviously, won one cup this season. We had what happened in the league, but this is a chance for a lot of them to silence some critics, even if they're leaving. It'll be the chance to say they've actually won something they've played against Celtic in their Rangers career. So, aye, how are you feeling, Dino?
Pretty much the same as all three of you guys. I don't really think I can add anything to what's just been said in the first few minutes there. Aye, I'm hopeful, but I'm pessimistic that anything is going to change. So aye, let's just get into it. That's where I'm at.
Fair enough, mate. I think a lot of the same. So the presser was something I really didn't want to touch on because of how long we could spend on it, but I feel like it's kind of the elephant in the room if we don't talk about it. I know the comments will be filled about it. So obviously, Four Lads Had a Dream came out today with a statement when they were asked about the injuries, that when Clement spoke to certain parts of the media, Sky included, they decided not to mention any injuries, but they sit down kind of later with the written media in terms of the papers, they decided to let loose a wee bit on the injuries, which seemed a really weird kind of change up, especially given it was only supposed to be like 10 minutes later they decided to do that. That's when obviously the news came out about the likes of Ridvan Yilmaz been in his office crying, and there was some other statements brought up that's making people think that he's going against what he said before. I've always kind of defended Clement and what he's saying in the presser. Like, he's saying things because he has to, but I think this is definitely the most kind of confused I've been after one of his press conferences. I think this is the one he's come under fire for the most. It's the last game of the season. It's a chance to win silverware. It's a chance to go and, again, show fans that they're not the serial losers that these players are being called. So, come at yourself first, Doug. What kind of did you take away from the press conference, and were you as confused as I was about some of the statements that Clement was making?
I mean, I think the thing about the not mentioning injuries and then mentioning them, I mean, to me, I think that's just simply not wanting to give information before the game. So he had the 24-hour embargo for the second one to come out, and so he said it in that one, knowing that it's that little bit closer to the game. So less time for maybe Celtic to do anything about that if they're looking to take advantage. Because I mean, it worried me just in the once again, injuries all over the place. The only bright side I can add to it now is that it's going to force him to make significant changes, because we seem to have no defence left. So I'm kind of hoping that it just pushes him that little bit further towards making some more significant changes, rather than just doing what I think a lot of us are expecting them to do in terms of maybe like Sterling at left back and things like that. That maybe it'll force them to think a little bit more out of the box.
Cammy, what were your biggest takeaways from that presser?
I hit the sack early last night, so I woke up at whatever time this morning to so many notifications about it, and I just find it strange that, I mean, I know what Doug's saying, but the presser was yesterday. It was in the same day. The embargoed section was embargoed to 10 o'clock last night. I don't understand why he's sitting with the boy for Sky, he's sitting with Joshua Barry and guys like that. And I watched Joshua earlier on, and I think he was as bamboozled as anybody why 15 minutes later he's went from, I mean, I think I stuck it in our chat, he's not said anything about any players. And I can understand why he's not said anything, because there's question marks over so many players. But to then come out and talk about Ridvan and talk about John Souttar, it was just a bit all over the place, to be honest with you. I mean, I think he's been decent pretty much the majority of his time doing pressers and what have you. But the last few weeks there's been a few sort of red flags, as they say. So it was a confusing one, but it's listen, it's done now. It's not going to affect what happens on the park tomorrow. We just have to try and it wasn't his finest moment as Rangers manager for me.
I think that's kind of how I feel with it as well, Cammy. Like a lot of the times I have defended him, and I think he has said what he's felt like he had to in terms of obviously people wanting to throw players under the bus when at that point in the league we were still capable of winning the league, still had the cup final head. Like he's obviously not going to do that then, but the decision to say that I'm not speaking about injury, I thought it was brilliant. Like I massively respect that, being able to say that I'm telling you nothing about the team. He actually said, I'm sure he said there was because it's a cup final, I'm not going to reveal anything. So to do that and then to change, even no matter how long the embargo is, like why not just be consistent with that and just not say anything the whole time? That was the biggest confusing thing to me. But do you know what did you take away from the presser? On mute, mate.
I was just following in your footsteps, mate. No, there was it was one of them where I was like, because I was like, I didn't see it until later on as well and stuff, and I just don't understand why you would do something that's kind of like, you know, people can look at that as maybe not being in control of his own emotions and what his own thinking when, you know, like as you see, be consistent. That's just what I took away from it. And you know, the questions he was getting asked, it's just I think he wants to forget about the presser as much as we do, doesn't he? And the question, obviously, or the point made out about, you know, the rebuild and the size of the rebuild. I think, Cammy, you remember one of the few ones I think you took different from a lot of people, because I took from that there was going to be a massive rebuild from what he initially said, and then he came back and said that we've blown out of proportion basically. The media obviously have, the majority fans have. So, you know, like, again, is it maybe one of them is, you know, pulling the reins back because it is a final, you know, doesn't want there to be too many players that are going to be thinking negative thoughts. You know, that's kind of what I was the way that I was looking at it. Maybe just bring the reins in to try and get everybody just tuned in for tomorrow, because a lot of the players, I think somebody said in the group chat that a lot of the players checked out at Motherwell, which I think is relatively accurate. So maybe it was just a case of trying to, you know, having a maybe more of a different spin on it for tomorrow, because something needs to change, doesn't it? Mindset and mentality is one thing I think we're crying out for a change. So I think it could have been, and that's kind of what I took from it, looking at it from that angle. But at least it's over with, and there's not going to be another pre-match presser this season. So that's taking the positive out of the negative there, lads.
Just touching on your point there about needing a change, mate, there's obviously a lot of discussion in the comments already about formation, players, and kind of how we're going to set up. So the big question is, and the title of the pod is, how do we beat Celtic? So I've thought for a while that we have to match them man for man in midfield. I feel like that's the biggest area we struggle with. Obviously, with Lundstram in there, he drops in towards the centre half, which leaves, whether it's Diamandi, whether it's Rask and Sterling. Realistically, when he plays that long ball, if that comes back, it leaves a 3-on-1 in the middle of the park, because the Celtic's three play close together and then split when they're going forward. So when that happens, which obviously happens a lot, it's kind of the big thing in Lundstram's games, playing that big like quarterback-esque pass from the centre half position, which again leaves, I know Diamandi's taking a lot of criticism and other players that have played in there like Raskin as well, but they do get left isolated a lot. Whereas if you at least have the three, if Lundstram still does that, you've still got a 2-on-3 instead of the 1-on-3. So the big thing I've always thought is if you match them 3-for-3, even you man mark McGregor, which I think it kind of looked like Lawrence was supposed to be doing the last game, but again, I don't think he's the type of player that's got the legs for that. The way obviously Cantwell done it at Ibrox in the last season, and it's the only time we've beat them in the league since then. Obviously, game was a dead rubber at that point, but it's looking at the comparison of that performance compared to what we've seen this year. I just think either man Mark McGregor or you just go 3 for 3 in the middle. To me, it's obviously not as simple as that. Football's never as simple as that, but that's the way that I think our best chance of going toe to toe with them is and having a chance of beating them. So, Doug, what would you change from recent games or all of the games this season, pretty much, that you think gives Rangers the best chance of beating Celtic tomorrow?
I mean, I totally agree with you. But we need to get a grip of that midfield area. I feel like if you take sort of Lundstram and McGregor together and compare them, they're very similar in a lot of ways, except how they kind of approach the games. I mean, you talked about long balls there. Lundstram plays over twice as many and has done over the course of the season as McGregor does. They play that tighter, quicker passing, much more passing. I mean, I think about at least 3 of the 4, they had over twice as many passes as we did throughout the games as well. And Lundstram, if you compare their defensive and attacking stats, Lundstram comes out on top in a lot of defensive ways, and McGregor comes out on top in a lot of attacking ways. And I think that's an outcome of the way that they're approaching the games. And I feel that if Lundstram is going to play, which with injuries and things, he may well do now. I think he needs to be more. He needs to be more front-footed and attack the game more than what he's been doing. Because otherwise, like you say, it's leaving that space there. It's letting them with their smaller, short passes just play through. They were getting loads of shots from outside the box in the last couple of games as well. And they had I think 13 in the previous game, or was that the game before? And 7 of them, were in that first half when they were totally on top of us and rattling us. And I think that's something that they've been really good at, obviously, is getting the ball, quickly moving it about with short passes, and then taking these pops from the edge of the box, rattling the defence, and then that's when they start getting their chances. So they really need to get on top of that, particularly at the beginning. Otherwise, as I say, we'll just see the same game again.
What about yourself, Cammy? How do you think, not even the best way that we counter Celtic, what can I set up or what can we change in our game style to have the best chance of beating them?
I think very much what you've what you were sort of talking about, Kai, and I can see I think Curry Muncher in the comments there talking about I think a flat 3. I don't have an issue if Lundstram plays, but he can't be part of a 2. I just in an ideal world, this is exactly what I thought when we went across there. When was that? A couple of weeks ago. Sterling, Lundstram, Diamande. Just use A3 as an example. Think back to the dead rubber about a year ago, and I think it was Raskin, Jack, and Lundstram. I could be wrong in that one, and I think Cantwell was sort of playing as a sort of false 9 in that game at Ibrox. And I'm not saying we'll do that but I think if we go with a sort of 2, I think the 3 is the key point tomorrow. But I have real doubts that he'll change. I think he strikes me as a very very stubborn, and this is, but without being over dramatic, if you continue to do the same thing, he's signing his own P45, and I know that's daft. He's only been in the job for 10 minutes, but you can't keep no turning up in Old Firm games, and you can't keep making the same mistakes. And I know there's going to be injuries, limitations. Dujon Sterling might have to play right back, centre half, left back, right wing. There's about 5 different positions that Dujon can probably be cloned and play tomorrow. And that's going to be an issue. But I think you can still put a team on the park that is set up not to be played through and not so easy to play against.
I think that's exactly what you say, Cammy. It's not so much a case of countering what they do. Like it's easy enough to stop it, but we've just watched time and time again of our midfield being completely bypassed. And like I know Doug had obviously mentioned the shots outside the box they had. I mean, how many did they have before O'Reilly actually scored that first goal? I think McGregor and O'Reilly had 2 each maybe before that happened. So that was maybe the 4th or 5th time they'd just been standing there in so much space, and they probably should have done better with the ones like beforehand, before O'Reilly scores that one. There was so much space there, and it seems so obvious to just plug another player in there, just change it up a wee bit, just drop the centre attacking mid back and just go a flat three. Because if what he's asking from Lawrence or anybody in the 10 is to drop back in there when we're defending, they're definitely not doing it. And maybe that's why the person playing that position is always the one that gets hooked off first. Maybe it is, but instead of demanding that, why not just drop them back in the first place? So you're not waiting for them to not do what you're asking. Just have them there for the start. It seems, again, it's really easy in hindsight looking back at it, but surely after seeing that, you change it going forward, and it's not what's happened so far. And I think that's where kind of a lot of the frustration comes from. But what about yourself, Dean? What would you change, and how would you set up to think what gives us the best chance of beating Celtic? You again, mate.
Pretty much what everybody else is thinking. Sorry, I'm professional there. We don't have the personnel to play a 10 in that system. We don't have a combative 10 who's, who could fill in and be a number 8 box to box midfielder. So that's number 10 that we need. We don't have the players for a 10 to be a free role and turn up as and when needed in the attack. So with the limitations of the personnel that we have, there has to be sacrifices made, because we don't even like the forward players. I mean, even like taking the wingers and the centre forward into consideration as well, like the press from them it's not in sync, it's not in unison. Like, it's almost like sometimes they don't know when to press, or they're pressing at the wrong time, which is obviously the same, and they're not pressing together. If that front three did that consistently, then maybe you could look at, obviously, like, okay, so behind them, how's that going to sit? But we've not got that. So right, okay, so then you've got the centre of midfield. Centre of midfield have to be disciplined, then have to be more disciplined, and have to be more in tune and more in sync. And if you've got a centre midfielder who's dropping back and becoming a sweeper as well, that's having a knock-on effect for everything else. So you've got to look at, and maybe take, I know it's easy to do, but comparisons of the midfield that we used to have under Gerrard, that 3 midfield. We all used to get frustrated, didn't we? Because it's funny, because we got frustrated because nobody, when you had the midfield 3 of Davis, Jack and Kamara, all 3 of them pretty much were round about, but they were all close, weren't they? They all knew what everybody was doing. And obviously when Arfield was in there, and it was all very well, it was drilled into them, it was very well organised, and that's a key word. Organisation is key. Celtic are very well organised. You've got to take your hat off to them, how well they actually are. They know exactly where everybody is in whatever phase of play it is, in defence or in attack. The midfield 3 are actually, that's one of the reasons why they've won the league, is because of how good that midfield 3 is in sync. And obviously with our injuries, players coming in, you've just touched on John Sterling playing so many different positions. There's not been any consistency in like who's playing next to who. It changes every week, which obviously definitely has a knock-on effect. However, they all train all year round. They're on the training pitch every day with each other. There should be contingency plans in place for these things, and sometimes it doesn't look like there is. Sometimes it looks like that they've, do these guys even train together? Do they even, so we need that instilled pronto, and that's going to be one of the ways that we can only, in my opinion, win the midfield tomorrow, because we don't have that number 10. It's something Cal McGregor that I've been shouting out all season. We need that number 10. Whoever's on Cal McGregor, that's going to be the game changer. But we don't have that. So let's put that thought in the bin. But and the next thought is, let's have a solid midfield 3 that's going to be able to, have our backs against the wall, because we don't have the players to be able to control the game like they do.
Just an interesting point you make, Dino's. Obviously, sometimes the team do look like they're not trained together. I think a lot of the time we want the team to press, and it seems like when Clement first came in, he did want them to press, and they wanted us to press high and press together. So you see a lot of the time you're looking at Clement on the sideline now, he's kind of pushing the players on and trying to get them up the park. Like, is that something I want to ask, like go around the panel and ask, do you think that's a player issue? Is it something that's not been worked on well enough? Because it seems like when it comes to the game on a Saturday or a Sunday, Clement's spending half his time telling the players to get up and telling them to press as if they're, and the players seem to be like shocked by that. Like it's something I've always thought was really confusing, because when people are like, oh, Clement's not got a style, it's just the same every time. If you actually see if there was a camera to focus on him, he spends so much of the time trying to get the team up the park, trying to get them up and pressing, but it doesn't seem to happen. So I'll start with yourself, Doug. Do you think that's an issue with the current players we have? Do you think it's something that's not been worked up upon? Do you think the players just aren't capable of it? Like, where do you think the issue lies? Is it a managerial thing? Is it the training pitch, or is it just the players that we have on the park?
I mean, the first thing, touching what Dino said there about consistency, I think that's a big issue, which is a player issue, because our players aren't fit and they're constantly injured. I had a look earlier on today, and we've got 11 players who've only been available for a consistent 5-week period, either once or twice during the season, and that's just that's a third of the squad who can't go a month without getting injured, and that ruins the consistency of selection. That stops the players in the park from forming little connections, and so often there's teams that have got like twos or threes that work really well together. Like you talk about, like fullbacks and wingers working well together because they build relationships, and you can't do that if the player you're playing with is different every other week because of injuries or form or whatever else. So the injuries is a big issue. You then get onto some of them aren't good enough, so then they're not playing regularly because they're good one day, but then they're awful the next. So your sort of Matondos and things like that have got great moments in them, as he showed a couple of weeks ago. He's got great moments in them, but they're fleeting moments. And we've got, I think a good 5 or 6 players that are firmly in that category as well. So when you're putting all those things together, I think, that's having a huge impact on their ability to get, second nature with the players around them. And, again, what Dino said there, Celtic have got that. If you watch their players, they're so obviously just second nature playing with each other. They know how to play to one another, and it's no coincidence that the period that they dropped all their points was when they had their injuries, and then once their players came back and they got that consistency again, they picked back up. And that was at a time when, and this comes back to the other side of the coin for us, when you've got players like Tavernier, Goldson, Lundstrom, all older and all playing every single game because they're the only ones who can. And therefore you can't rest them because you're having so much problems elsewhere. So you're trying to keep the consistency with that. And so again, I don't think it's a coincidence that Lundstrom's form has gone down in the last third of the season. Tavernier's form has gone down in the last third of the season. I reckon they're probably mentally tired, they're physically tired. And so again, then you start getting like all these mistakes that Tavernier's been making have all been in this last third of the season. Things that he didn't do in the first half of the season and generally doesn't do over the course. But, just these ridiculous mistakes. And I think it's all part and parcel of that. And so I think, then for Clement, if we assume that, if we go with the first half of what he was doing was good and that all these things have been affecting him, if you come back to like what Cammy was saying about, he maybe is a bit stubborn with his play, but then that might make his signings key, because if he can sign better players, if he can sign fitter players, then he can play the same system all the time if the players are then able to do it, because then they'll hopefully start winning. But time will tell as to whether that's the case or not, and we'll see you next season.
It's interesting talking about the consistency, and then referring to Celtic's midfield. Obviously, the players have stayed the same, but they've changed manager. They don't press as high as obviously they did under Ange. It's not a completely different system, but it's still different the way they play with Rodgers. But they still, as soon as it comes to Old Firm Day, like Dino said, every one of their midfielders know where's the other one is. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They still dominate that midfield. It doesn't matter which manager they've had recently. When it comes to that game, they're on it. And again, that's a big issue we've always had. But can we just, on the previous point, looking at Clement on the sideline, do you think the issue with that and him constantly telling the players to press, is it a player issue, coaching? Is it the manager? Who do you think the blame lies with that one?
Well, I think he spoke about off the ball. I think I think he was talking about Cantwell and how that's the Cantwell that we want. I'm not just picking on him, but I think he does have an issue about the work off the ball, and I think I don't know. There isn't even a language barrier, because he does speak. He's got a good command of English, and I don't think he should. His message should be that difficult to get across. Doug's spot on with regard to players that have been available and fitness, and like say Lundstrom run into the ground constantly playing, and then I think for just use him as an example, I think he's looked dead on his feet the last couple of months, and obviously that's sort of what's sort of happened, But I think it's a head scratcher, to be honest with you. I just think he should have shown a wee bit more adaptability when we had less width, when the wide players weren't there. I wasn't a great fan of trying to turn Dujon Sterling into a right winger when you're playing in a home game against Motherwell and stuff like that. I just think a wee bit of, I do think he's very stubborn. This is the way I want to play. This is the way I want to play, which is all well and good. But I think you need to adapt to situations when, I was watching another podcast and they were talking about Man City against Real Madrid and how Real Madrid were struggling with regard to Man City's press. And then what they said is Ancelotti then went long, and he was like just almost like playing. I'm not saying going long ball and go Mike Bassett 4-4-2 and that sort of thing, but I think just show a bit more adaptability, just variation. Don't be stuck on playing a certain. This is the way I want to play, and I can't. Plan A is it. We don't have something that you can sort of you can change when personnel isn't there. But I think fitness is a huge issue for us, and I think the manager has spoke about it a lot. Conditioning. He's put a pressure on himself come pre-season, and these players are going to have the toughest pre-season that they've ever had, and that puts the fear of God into me right enough. How many players are actually going to be injured after that pre-season, But it's there's so many issues, to be honest, Kai.
I think the fitness thing is interesting because obviously Michael Beale said the same when he came in, didn't he, that the players were massively unfit, and apparently we looked leggy and we looked poor in pre-season because he was doing the double training sessions, but it's not helped now. I don't know if there's just not been a consistency with that. There's something that's obviously missing on the training pitch. Maybe the players are doing nothing outside of football. Do you know what I mean? But they're not, as much as we'd love them to, they're not obliged to do that. You obviously want everybody to be in peak physical condition, but footballers aren't obliged to do anything out with their training sessions. It's what they're paid to do. So it can't be that, because not every single player on this planet is going to be spending hours in the gym before and after training. There's been call-outs and fitness issues of the last three managers that's came in. So there's obviously either a deep-rooted issue within the players or the coaching staff that's here, or just the general setup around training. But go back to the point, Dino, on obviously how Clement's been on the sideline, that kind of frustration he's shown. Do you think it's something that he's not done well enough, the players aren't capable, or it's just something that's not working on the training pitch? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of mitigating factors to that. And I think it's just, again, be honest with you, I think a lot of players have checked out, and I think that a lot of players have lack of interest, for a better word. I just think a lot of players aren't interested. I think I think in terms of Clement and his animations on the sideline, you know, he has that aura about him that I think he is a great motivator. I do think that I thought that was one of the things that attracted me to him when he first joined. I think it's going to be a good motivator. So, and I do think he's frustrated, but the players not listening to him. But I think a lot of it is maybe down to maybe muscle memory as well for the players. And I think that might be a hard thing for somebody to change when there's so many players that, as I think Doug said there, like 5 weeks at a time, do you know, and personnel changing. So I just think that might be something to do with it as well. And because of that, you know, I'm going to give him the summer to obviously to change things the way he wants it. And I think then you might see him being able to have a plan B. Because if we actually cast our memories back, you had Gerrard, who didn't have a plan B. Gerrard played the same way every game, didn't he? And we were crying out for Gerrard to change things up, but he was stubborn in his own game plan. And then it was the same with Gio, wasn't it? Gio didn't change anything, and then the same with Peel. His arrogance. Now it seems like we've got this again with Clement, but you do see Clement on the sidelines, like you're saying, Kai, like different to the ones I've just talked about to me. So I just think it's maybe frustration with certain players and they're not listening to him. I think that he maybe does want to have a plan B, but he maybe isn't. Maybe he's not confident to change things, and it's maybe just why he's even more animated on the sideline, because he just wants players to listen to him, to the basic instructions that he's setting out to them, and they're clearly not adhering to it. So that's making him probably more frustrated, which is then adding to him being more animated on the sidelines, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt, as I said, have the summer, like we just touched upon there with the pre-season. I mean, I'd love to see them at Murder Hill, I really would. And get them fit back to the levels of fitness that we had under Gerrard, where, you know, there was never a team that was fitter than us. Gio came in and just continued that level of fitness with obviously the training that he did. And, you know, we've done 220 minutes within the space of 3-4 days, with pretty much the same players starting both games. Not very many teams are actually able to do that with those like levels of fitness. And I mean, I know Bassey was a complete and utter enigma, but him running down that touchline, you know, things like that, and that's just credit to Gerrard and Gerrard's team of the levels of fitness that we had gotten ourselves to. And I feel that Clement that's levels he wants to get to, and so I'm confident, but as Cammy said, apprehensive about the potential injuries that may transpire from that. However, I do think that it's frustration basically within a lot of things for Clement, and I think next season, his own players in, as I say, benefit of the doubt that he'll be able to hopefully be less animated, because you'll have players that are maybe understanding more as well, and it might just be down to players having lack of football and IQ is what I say as well. Do you know, there's that side of things, and football's a lot more analytical these days as well. So long as you said that the Mike Bassett 4-4-2 days are done and dusted, and now it's all sitting in rooms watching computers, watching screens, things like that. Do you know? And that's obviously the way that it is. So maybe if you've got people and you know, people's brains who are susceptible of that and they're understanding, but then you've got players who are like not understanding, and you know, like Scott Wright, you just run into somebody every second time you get the ball. Do you know? So I think it's maybe just frustration more than anything, mate, for me.
I think it's interesting, obviously, talking about Calvin Bassey. Like, he's obviously was a completely different animal fitness-wise when it comes to players, but I don't think there's anyone in the squad just now that if it came to the 110th minute or whatever it was yesterday, and they've been playing from the start, I don't think there's anyone that would be able to kind of give us that type of run. And that's obviously an indictment of where we are fitness-wise just now. I'm going to move on and talk about, obviously, Clement mentioned that he's going to take a risk with some players. So, again, we're not going to do predicted lineups because, I mean, we could be miles out. We don't know who he's going to take a risk with. There's obviously some players that are back in the training pitch, like Cortez and Danilo, but I don't think he's going to take that much of a risk, especially when it looks like Cortez is probably going to be back next season. You don't want to make anything worse with Danilo, and you can give him a full pre-season. So it's probably looking like that player's going to be Sima. But just looking at the game tomorrow, come at yourself first, Doug, who do you think could be the key player, the player that's going to, not the player that's going to stop Celtic, the player that's going to help us win the game, the player that's get the biggest chance of taking the game by the scruff of their neck and putting us over the line?
I mean, the real answer to that question is all of them, because they're all going to have to be at it if I think if we're going to get something. But it's hard to answer because there's so many questions about what the lineup's going to be. I mean, if Lundstrom plays, he'll be a key player, because if we get him at his best, then he can run the game. But if we get what we've been getting, then it'll be no good. In terms of like taking risks, my mind immediately goes, like you say, to the players who've just come back from injury. Is he going to put one of them in? Sima could be a big player. He obviously was scoring goals from us. He's good defensively in terms of getting up and down the pitch as well. So he could be a big player if he plays. Just obviously how much will he have in the tank coming in if he does. Is he going to maybe go with Cantwell, which he's not been doing? Is that what he's thinking is his risk? Because I do think there's been a bit between the two of them. There's obviously the game when he got hooked really early. So I think there's maybe obviously been a little bit between them in terms of what, touching on what you were saying about him not getting what he wants from players. I think there was a time he obviously wasn't getting what he wanted from Cantwell, and presumably still isn't entirely, because he's not been putting him into these big games. And again, he's got the potential to do something. So I think Tavernier as well, at the end of the day, he remains our most creative player. He creates across the season, he's created our most chances, our most big chances. He's our best crosser. He tends to throw in most of our crosses. Obviously, Celtic are bad from crosses. He's got the most goal contributions against Celtic than anyone else. So, if he can turn up, I think that we need to, part of doing well is trying to get him forward again without leaving too much gaps there, because what's happened in the last couple of games is I think his attacking threat has really been minimalised. So we need to get around that. But yeah, I mean, I can't really pick one player because I feel like I have no idea who's going to be playing. But the real answer is everybody.
What about you, Cam? Is there anyone that you're going to predict that you'd take a risk on, or who do you think could be the key player that gets us over the line?
I think Sima will probably be the player that he takes the risk on, because he's obviously going to be going back to Brighton. I don't think he probably isn't fit enough to start, but the danger in having him on the bench is that you don't know what position the game's going to be in when you get to 60, 65, 70 minutes when you're then going to bring him on. I've got a sneaky, and I know this might, Ryan Jack could, I know he's not kicked a ball in 3 months maybe, but according to Steve Clark, he says he's been fully fit for the last 2 weeks. You might be you're talking about playing a middle three. You could play Ryan Jack. You could play Jack, Raskin, Diomande. You could play Jack, Lundstrom, Diomande, and you could push Cantwell into support for one of the wide positions, sort of thing. I think Doug's spot on. They all need to be on it. Jack Butland has to be doing what Jack Butland does. The best version of Tav, and I think Doug's saying that Tav's our main creative force. I think if I'm sitting here on the 24th of May 2025 and we're still talking about James Tavernier as our main creative force and James Tavernier as our top goal scorer, honest to goodness, that can't continue into next season. That's a huge. I remember saying that 12 months ago, and I really hope I don't say it again. I would love Cyril Dessers. He's had one hell of a season, ups, downs. We win the game tomorrow. I would love him to get the winning goal. He's and without getting into his qualities and the things that he's no good at, comes across as a really, really good guy, good teammate, all that sort of stuff. I would love him to score the winning goal and then sign for a Serie A team in the summer for $4.5 million or something like that. Leave Rangers as a winner, having scored the winning goal. That for me, he's the key. For me, he's the key player. We'll need him to stick the ball in the back of the net for the chances that we hope to create tomorrow.
I think there's, like you say, Cam, there's a lot of things you can question about Dessers, but one thing you really can't is his attitude in the kind of interviews he's done the last couple of weeks. He comes across so well. Like he's taken the criticism. He's never backed down. He's never taken the huff. He's never not given less than 100%. Like he knows he gets dogs abuse online. Like I seen the interview he done. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, and he came out and said they'd read the comments saying he's the worst player ever to sign for Rangers when he was still putting the furniture in his place. Do you know what I mean? It's never got him down. It's never turned him away. He's still, as much as he misses his chances, he's still scored a lot of crucial goals. He's still put himself out there. He's never been afraid. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. The Ryan Jack shout as well. I'm not going to be upset if I see Ryan Jack starting tomorrow. Like I think people forget how good he actually is because of his availability. Like how important a player is to that midfield when he's fit. So again, I wouldn't be upset about that. But Dino, what about yourself? Who's a key player for you, and who, if there's any, do you think could be a shock conclusion tomorrow?
I think we could potentially see players that have been missing for ages, even on the bench tomorrow. I think possibly Cortez. I think he could be included. And I think that was a really good point about Sima. I think it goes to really players who would be first names on team sheets if fully fit. We have to start them tomorrow because we have consistently, I can't remember the last time that we played Celtic where we didn't concede in the first half. And going into half-time, down in the Scottish Cup final, after losing the league, after a lot of players going Ital, so it's one of them we need to put in our best 11, and even if 3 of them can only last the 45 minutes, then so be it. But let's go. Let's just go for it and hope that we're the ones that are 1 or 2 up by half time, or at least on the score sheet by half time and in the game, and not waiting on the players turning up from the 46th minute onwards. We need the players turning up for the first minute onwards tomorrow, and as Cammy said, and that's from Butland, and that's to Dessers, and you're right, from Dessers we know for a fact that man will leave nothing on the pitch tomorrow, and every player needs to be the same and not leave anything on the pitch tomorrow. And you see, if we do get beat, at least we can hold our heads high and say, do you know what, I'm actually proud of these players today. They've given everything. They've been beaten by the better side. It's when we get beaten by them. Now, on paper, they may be the better side, but they're the better side because their players don't leave anything on the pitch. And I've seen weaker Rangers teams beat better Celtic teams all throughout my life, and they've beaten them because their attitude, their mentality is better than the Celtic players. And that's what we need from every single person tomorrow, and that's including the 16th man that ends up coming on. And if Sima can last 45 minutes and he scores a goal, that's brilliant. That's a great way to return to your club. And if Dacers can run his cell ragged in the morning and make us be frustrated one or two times, but he scores that winning goal, or he's contributed to the game, then there's not one Rangers fan that will criticise him. I can tell you that right now. And that's what we need tomorrow. And the players need to believe in themselves. Sometimes I feel as though when we play Celtic, the players don't believe even in their own selves, in their own team, in their own ability. I mean, we're Rangers, for goodness sake. We're playing Celtic. You've got to have belief. Even if can't he be scared of them? Can he be beaten before we've even started? And if the mentality is there, the tactics are there, and these players can take these injections to even, as I said, get 45 minutes out of them, then we could be in for a hell of a first half.
I think that's the thing I said at the start as well, mate. Like, a lot of the frustration comes from they might be the better team on paper, but it's the fact that we've not looked at a Rangers side that's been beaten by Celtic this season or last and thought, do you know what? They gave 100%. Like you say, they left everything on the park. We've not been able to say that. We've went there, we've bottled it, we've panicked, we've froze, everything but giving it 100%, and that's all we want tomorrow. So going into that, I'm going to ask for a score prediction for everyone tomorrow. So Doug, start with yourself.
I'm going to say 3-2 to us, of course. Got to be optimistic. I struggle to see us stopping them scoring if we had all of our defenders. So the fact that we've got only about one of them, unfortunately, I think they're definitely going to score. So it's going to have to be another glorious last-minute goal, but this time to win.
Cammy, what are you going for tomorrow?
More in hope than in expectation. I'm going for a 2-1 Rangers win in 90 minutes. My initial prediction, I think, to you at 9 o'clock this morning was after extra time, but I think having spoken about the lack of fitness and that sort of situation, I don't know if my heart could probably handle extra time either, to be perfectly honest with you. So I'll go for 2-1 in extra time, but just echoing what has been said, just leave it all out there. The 20 odd thousand Rangers fans that are going to be there tomorrow will back the team 100%. So they will get behind the players on the park even more if they see the effort, the application. Sometimes it just takes a tackle. Just that. I'm not saying Dale Looney at Celtic Park and get yourself a red card, but sometimes just put a marker down and get the place going, and sometimes that energizes your teammates and what have you. But they're a decent side, but don't let them play and show the best version of Rangers, and we'll hopefully be lifting that cup come 5 o'clock tomorrow night.
What are you going for, mate?
Aye, 2-1 for me as well, to Rangers, obviously. And I can just only echo what everybody said. I can't really add anything else. I think, as I said, there's just the players have just got to believe that they can win it. And come 5 o'clock, we've just got to hope that that's the case. And a lot of these players are going to be going back to clubs or leaving us. So I want them all to leave on a high, and it will cushion the blow for not winning the league. Put it that way. But 2-1, I think Tav will score a penalty. I think there'll definitely be a penalty in it, and I think. Dacers, some laws of attraction and all that, isn't it? Dacers scoring that winning goal to really send the Rangers fans bananas. 2-1 for me, mate. What about yourself?
I'm going to. I was thinking that before you said about the Dessers winner as well. I'm going to go with 2-1 and Dessers to get the winner. Hopefully, it's a bit more comfortable in the 90th minute, but you can't beat that buzz of a last minute winner, especially in a cup final. So we'll wrap it up there, lads. Just as you can see, scrolling down the bottom, the Walter Smith statue will be unveiled at 12 noon tomorrow. And the lads, I think Scotty, Ross, and Chris Paul potentially are going to do a pod live from there. So make sure you're subscribed below so you don't miss that. So just go around the panel and just thank everybody for coming. So Doug, brilliant debut tonight, mate. Thanks very much for coming on.
Cheers, thanks again for having me. Look forward to the next one.
Cammy, pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thoroughly enjoyed that.
Dino, thanks again for coming on, mate.
Thanks, everybody. It was a good pod. Kind of helping with the with apprehension for tomorrow. So yeah, brilliant, guys. Catch you all soon.
So let's hope we're all celebrating at 5 o'clock tomorrow, and just remember that every night is the Rangers Journal night. Thanks for coming.